Our next section, our part 2, is going to be more on story maps and the ArcGIS school bundles and how they've been leveraged, and how Dr. Sarah Coppersmith has been leveraging them here in her design. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce, this next section will be a little bit more like the panels that we saw yesterday for those of you that were here. But we'll also have some of the presentations kind of going on here. So I will go ahead and introduce everyone first, and then they'll come out here. First off, we have Dr. Sarah Coppersmith, who is a member of the UMSL College of Education Geodesign team. Next up, we'll have Dr. Fatemah Mardi, who is on the Geospatial Design team at the College of Education at UMSL. And then we actually have a 5th grade teacher here from Christ Community Lutheran School, Dee Leible, right? Okay, Leible. So with that, Sarah, you're going to kick this off, right?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So it's not just all about story maps. It's all about the maps, how to connect tools and applications for K-12 teachers. Our College of Education Geodesign team includes Dr. Phyllis Balzerzak, Dr. Keith Miller, Dr. Fatemah Mardi, myself, and Andrea Holmes. Oh, yeah, we're partnering with St. Louis educators, Katie Endorf, Dee Leible, Alex Schenk, and Matt Sellers. So we're very happy and excited about the work we're doing. And thank you to Dr. Miller and to Dr. Tara Mott for some of these slides. I worked with a kindergarten English language teacher from our TESOL program here at UMSL, and she wanted to make some story maps. So her kindergartners were learning the names of plants and fruits, and so they mapped where they were from and the foods they ate at the kindergarten level. So it was very exciting. I learned from TESOL teachers that vocabulary words are important. So I'd like to share some vocabulary words with you and maybe some that our teachers here can remember today. When I first came to St. Louis, I worked as a cartographer with the Aeronautical Defense Mapping Aerospace Agency and an aeronautical chart company that worked for the military. Back then, the words that I liked were aeronautical and aerospace. Now I love saying geospatial, and as of this morning, geospatial ecosystem and the Space Force from NGA. I like saying that St. Louis is the center of the geospatial universe, and I said that at the recent National Council for Geographic Education conference to some Esri folks, and they kind of just looked at me. I said, yeah, get used to it. I can also say from yesterday's program, we have the power of the special spatial hyperspectral spectrum, and those of you who weren't here yesterday missed that one. It's like a tongue twister. And I like saying celestial reference frame that I learned from our NGA partners. Jesse, who offered some workshops for us, and we're learning about the universe. We have access to the universe through those who measure, explore, and map it now. But we wonder, how do we bring the universe to the K-12 classroom? As a member of the National Council for Geographic Education and the Missouri Geographic Alliance, I learned about Esri's T3G. That's a word teachers can write down, teachers teaching teachers. And I've been an affiliate with that group for 10 years. Teachers can join, and there's a monthly webinar and training. I like to say that I'm honest on my learning curve. I continually need to learn more about GIS. I've helped coordinate Esri education grants on another campus and offer professional development for teachers. After that, I led a Library of Congress grant for teaching with primary sources and GIS, and visited schools to help teachers infuse that into their curriculum. From that, I learned that, through our College of Ed, that social cultural constructivism is important, that learning happens in a setting and a context. So I was proud to meet with our scholars at the Geospatial Collaborative and our College of Ed Geodesign team to learn more about how to infuse GIS with students, teachers as leaders, partners in the community, using geospatial technology, focusing on inquiries and ideas. So that's one of the best places to cradle the use of GIS. This slide from Esri's T3G talks about the geographic inquiry process. Now we know that it's multidisciplinary. So we don't just focus on geography, but many disciplines within the school curriculum. So first, asking geographic questions, acquiring resources, exploring the data, analyzing and acting on what you have found. So that other word is geoinquiry. That's the next one to focus on as your vocabulary. The instructional use of GIS can start with a presentation or demo of a map like you've seen this morning and yesterday, a scripted activity, an expanded script, a directed project, or a custom project, which we like doing with our teachers, and you'll hear about a little bit more from Dee. Thanks to Dr. Mott for this slide, we have the best of both geoinquiries and story maps. And since I don't have a cursor to click on the link, you can go to Esri and look for GeoInquiries story map. There's a map there with GeoInquiries already built. I have my undergraduate geography students design their own GeoInquiries. So while there's some already set for teachers, whatever grade level you're at, you can eventually have your students design them themselves. We have a statewide story map contest that's part of the National Esri Story Map Contest. And Dee attended one of our trainings for that. And I learned 2 days ago that Missouri placed in the national competition, the middle school and the high school, with an honorable mention. The students were from St. Louis. One student placed before, I think he won, Kai Henzik Smith from Wydon Middle. He did a story map on poverty and food in St. Louis. So that's important to our theme today. So the story map contest is a yearly event. It's a nice way to showcase what your students have been doing. Teaching with GIS, thanks to Tara for this one too. So many resources on teaching tools, lessons, knowledge, how to use story maps in your classroom. And the software is free, which is pretty powerful software, and in the hands of your own students. So you would look up mapping software for K-12 through Esri. So that's just a little bit about the technology, but my slide about how do those gears connect and how we work together is what we will talk about now with our representatives from the geodesign team. I'll start with Dr. Fatemah Mardi.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I'm Fatemah Mardi. I am a technical content developer at Amazon. Before that, I was an instructional designer at Google. And I taught at UMSL for 10 years, pre-service and in-service teachers, educational technology, math education, curriculum and instruction. Most importantly, I was a 6th grade and 4th grade teacher. So I am one of you. So along with some names that were mentioned earlier, Dr. Keith Miller, Dr. Phyllis Balcerzak, educators of St. Louis, we all partnered together, and our goal was, how can we get all this awesome technology into the classroom? It's our guiding question, it's our research question, it's what we've been working on. So we did a lot of interdisciplinary research and all the analysis of our sessions, the interviews, survey responses, and we came up with something that, the gist of it, the challenges and obstacles that teachers face is time, right? And so starting on the left, the time that it takes to learn the mapping technology was one of the biggest challenges and obstacles. The time it takes to align it to the instructional plans and then develop integrated mapping lessons. And then after that, it's the time that it takes to curate data sets and be able to have the confidence to support the inquiry in the classroom. So step one, we meet teachers where they are, and we acknowledge that this is the reality. Part two is that we understand that these are all dependent steps. So if you're still working on learning the technology, you might not really, your concern might not be supporting your students in the classroom. You kind of have to go from step A, B, and then you get to C. And we started piloting different ways to find out how we can provide solutions. So about this first one, how educators need to learn the mapping, this is kind of going on its own, technology. We started with the novice mentoring expert coaching method. So I'm going to give you some names. Fatemah, Andrea is is here with us. Alex is not with us. Alex is a high school SLPS teacher, and he's considered our expert. And Andrea is our mentored expert, meaning she did some self-studying, she watched all the videos, was mentored by this high school educator, and learned this mapping technology. Then she taught me in these structured and scheduled sessions, the novice. I played the role of a high school student. And so she got the benefit of being mentored and learned it, but then she also really learned it when she taught me, right? Because we know that's when you learn is when you teach. So we had this structured coaching method set up, and the way that it works is that the novice does this public learning and asks all the questions and really surfaces all the issues as they're doing this publicly. Like I was the one sharing the screen. But what we noticed, and it was great, and it serves a function, but what we noticed is there are these organic emergent requests for help. And for that, we need just-in-time training. We need to respond to these emerging problems. And the mentor in the room was there to help. And just in this example, there was a time where I wanted to move something based on the actual data. So I wanted to use the histogram as a reference and have it reflect those bins. And so it's basically someone as the learner is really interested, but they don't have the ability to make that happen. So whether it's based on research or content, it's like, I want to do this thing, teach me how to do this. So even though the mentored expert watched all the videos, knew how to exactly implement everything that she was prepared for, these emerging, fun things happen. And in the previous sessions, we all talked about we all heard how they talked about how it's a different generation of students, they're excited, they see things differently. But it leads to this, that they're interested. And with interest comes, well, now I need to do this. So the next one is, helping teachers get ready to prepare to teach. So in this piloting, we knew that they needed curated data sets. That might be a little small. So we needed our data sets to be understandable, relevant, suitable, right? So like no alcohol data sets. There are a lot of things out there that we just can't use in K-12. Death, mortality, there are a lot of things that you really need to curate it. So then practice activities. We wanted to have these mini sessions that then you apply what your skills are, and and it also leads to a culminating task. These are things that, need to be developed. Exemplars. You have these finished products, you're exposing your students to the finished products, you're also showing them what an inquiry can look like from end to end. So these are things that we're working on. Another thing that Alex is working on that was not something that we knew about from the research and from what we gathered was just like the flow. So this is something that is in progress. So the agenda, having a launch activity, having the flow of how each session will repeat itself, direct instructions, skill checkpoint, how it leads to the culminating activity. This is something that you have to build out, you have to test, we're experimenting, and we're working on this. And the final piece of this piloting is to support our students, our teachers' students, while they're doing the inquiry. developing resources, right? So if we just thought if we can do the flipped classroom model and have these micro-learning videos ready, so if the teacher prepares them, then we can encourage autonomous learning. We can have a troubleshooting like hyperdoc. So, to put this together and say, well, if you lose your panel, click here. If you, don't want to read this, here's this video to put this together, right? So all these resources. While we're working on this, we also, again, have these organic emergent requests for help, right? And so this is where just-in-time training comes in. We got an email from Alex, our educator, saying, it's the end of the year. These are some of my students, and this is where their research is, and this is kind of where they're stuck. So the UMSL College of Education design team got together, we had a session, and we worked on their topics. And we really just did a think aloud, okay, well, what data is accessible, what can we use, what can they do, what's feasible in this time frame. We asked a lot of questions, recorded the session, and emailed it to Alex. He played the session in class. All the students got insight into how we looked at this, and they got that nudge, that support, that extra push that they needed to finish out their projects. So while we're piloting all these solutions together, it also brings the question of, well, how are we going to scale this support and all these, fun, wonderful things that we're doing? And the answer is a networking model to grow technology transfer in K-12 classrooms. And while networking might mean very different things, to all of you, what we mean by that is to establish a human infrastructure to involve teachers and also provide visible support as they're designing and carrying out these inquiries. So to echo what Bob Sharp just said about, reaching out and, contact someone you don't know, it's all part of that support network, and it takes a village, right? So we're trying to be parts of this effort to build this human infrastructure. And if you look at it as like interdisciplinary network nodes, these are things that we have been working on as we integrate mapping across the curriculum. So university software engineering course, pre-service teacher STEM courses, as Sarah mentioned, an honors college course. We're piloting into K-12 classrooms, and after school clubs, different subjects. It's all possible, and we're slowly building, but also I'd like to add to that challenge. If you're an educator in the St. Louis area, please reach out. We'd love to collaborate with you. And I'll pass it to Dee.
Thank you. I had no idea that I would even be here beginning of the year. Sarah reached out to me in the classroom and said, hey, would you be interested in learning? And so I was like, yeah, I'm game to learn. And she introduced this awesome technology to me. But as we know, teachers, our plates are already full. And so my first question is, well, why does this fit into my teaching? I need to know the why before I even take the effort to put it in front of my students. So with that, whenever I was just exposed to this information, it was the visual learning. I have a large scale of students, low and high. This gave them a visual way to understand complex knowledge at their level, at their interest. That was a game changer. Diverse learners. I have students in my class that English is their second language. And so they are able to see information, and we don't have to worry about the vocabulary as much, and we can bring that in as needed, but they can see information in their context. And then preparing them for their future. Looking at just the capabilities of the jobs that aren't even created yet that can use this information, and how they can bring that to their own culture and their own level. With their own peers that they talk about, the conversations that they have, even in a middle school classroom, that make such a big impact. So with that, I have a background of math and history. Math is definitely my forte, and so as I got into this, I'm a spreadsheet queen, and I saw the potential of how it can take the 3,000 rows of data and make it so simple for my lowest level students. But also as a history teacher, how we can build those relationships and processes into understanding at students' level. The reading the maps, our students, they can search up Google Maps, they can look at a map, but the actual deciphering and analyzing the map is the key. And this technology makes it so tangible and interactive that they can relate to it and bring their own interest into it. So with that, I focused on bringing it into my classroom with these 4 areas. Standards, how am I gonna commit to this and making it fit into my area, but also convince my admin to let me try this new technology in this new area that isn't in an approved area. So with that, super easy to do with Missouri and national standards that progress them into their upper level learning. It's not just because I'm gonna meet them at a 5th or a 7th grade standard, but these skills are gonna play on into high school and their future. Student skills of creating maps, the data input, and data analysis. Especially as a math person, the numbers and the way they make it meaningful is a game changer. But how am I gonna bring this to my students? The tutorials, presentations, the scaffolding at their younger mind level. And logistics, how am I gonna have the students create their account? How am I gonna have them see it? And privacy issues. All those were questions I had that this team was fabulous about helping and equipping. So I decided to bring it into my students' world by the introduction, as Sarah mentioned, the presentation tool. So I took the national maps that students were creating, because this is my first year. I've never had students create maps before, so where's my set that I can pull from that I can present to these students? So I took the National Geographic Map Competition and took positional maps that I knew my students would be interested in and just presented them to my class. And then I gave them some choices. Hey, I want you to be able to explore and find out what you have and what you're interested in. And so we did that through a hyperdoc. Once I had my students engaged, they're like, that's pretty neat. Let's see what we can do. So then I took it into creating their own students' accounts, which is a free resource. Again, all it was a quick form to fill out for my school. We had student accounts. We can set your privacy just to be internal and not external. There's a whole list of things that they can do with that free account. Then I let them go. I let them go on their curiosity. So in 7th grade specifically, we have a research component that we bring into the classroom, and this just was incorporated into our research unit. And so I let their curiosity and their interest drive their project. With that map creation, it was really eye-opening, again, to the critiquing a map, what makes a good map, what's the audience for. All went into this, and having them be able to understand. In this situation, do you want the dark colors of your map to be good or bad? Do you want the dark colors to mean a lot or a little? Depends on the context. We then ran into me learning. So I'm learning this data for the first time. I'm gonna be upfront and honest with my students. Hey guys, I know some answers, but I don't know all the answers. So what I did, similar to in fashion with Alex, right? He had the spreadsheet of just different problems and solutions. I had a spreadsheet of a student that would fill out a Google form and they would enter their problem. I would then work with what I knew to be able to problem solve for that child. I was modeling that growth mindset with my students, and they were actually, I feel like, more motivated because they knew I didn't know all the answers, but I was willing to try. And that made a game changer in their attitude in the classroom. And so The second part that we incorporated once they were getting the game of it, or they call it the game, just the project, but the data collection. We took it up another notch, added a little spice, as I like to call, and we brought in Survey 123, which was really neat in how the students created a survey, and those survey results are then placed as a layer on the map that they created. So just being able to crowdsource their own community into a map that was meaningful for them. Talk about the discourse that was engaging at high level because it was their interest, their topics, their data. And then we brought that into the storytelling maps. They took all of that into the maps that they created to tell a story that they wanted to share specifically with our audience in the classroom, but ultimately to our greater community. That's all I have, sorry. Didn't mean to leave you on a cliffhanger.
Thank you so much. Well, we had planned to have some more panel kind of questions here and kind of go into this, but I think to try to get us back on schedule, we'll just kind of do like a quick summation, and then during the break, you guys can all talk to each other and you can ask some more questions. So again, thank you, Sarah, for kind of explaining that the way your kind of platform is kind of working, and Fatemah for expanding on that and how you have been working through this curriculum design, and Dee for how you're actually incorporating it into the classroom and taking a chance, because I think that's something that probably a lot of people want to hear is like, how do I really get started? And I've got a question, and Nicole, I'm not sure if you're the right one to ask on this, but so the slides from the OpenStreetMap and from this section, from part 1 and part 2 of these tools and applications, are these going to be all made available to all the teachers that attended? Because I think there's a lot of great hyperlinks in both part 1 and part 2 that I think would be really helpful for the teachers to kind of have a little bit more time on their own. So yeah, I think that that would be great. So I guess we have just a couple. Does anybody want to say anything, or do we want to just have John come up here and take us to break? All right, let's go ahead and just give another round of applause for the panelists here.